Laurie Huston's News for the Heart is dedicated to helping you give a voice to your own soul. Our hearts have the power to free us from pain and the struggles that keep us from awakening to our true essence. Join Laurie now as we delve into our heart and soul to find the path that will open us to the possibilities and lead us to the life we love to live.
And good afternoon. This is News for the Heart. And today, well, it's the last Tuesday of the month, which means I have my awesome co-host with me, Tom Campbell. Now, Tom, you just returned from a wonderful celebration, which I really wish I had been able to come to, but did not pan out. But let's chat about that a little bit. Welcome to the show.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it was really a very wonderful event. Worked out very well, and I'm skeptical of everything, but it was something we hadn't done before.
Right.
This was Keith's idea, and it really wasn't the usual event where Tom talks all day and the audience listens and asks questions. It wasn't mainly a Q&A. I did some Q&A for 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon, but that was it. Okay. The idea is that the people there were to interact, were to, get to know each other, were to, talk. And we gave them a task at the beginning that said, try to, because these were people who have been to multiple events. These are, there were a couple of people there that this was their first time, but the large majority of these people have been around MBT for at least 5, some of them 10, 15 years. They've been doing MBT. So this was the hardcore MBT group for the most part, and I asked them to be thinking about ways that we could spread the ideas that love is the answer, that we need to be, more kind and caring, and we need to be that way, not just act that way, and so on. How can we spread this philosophy or whatever you might call it, to more and more people? How do we reach? So they thought about that, and they came up at the end. We had like 7 or 8 people get up out of the audience and did little presentations about things they thought could be done, and so it was always very good. But this was a party. It was like a house party for old MBT crowd, and we did it in Europe, of course. This was in England. It was called Beamish Hall, which was a big, I don't know if you'd call it a castle, big manor house, very much like Lumley. You were at Lumley. Well, it was a big place like Lumley, and it was full. Plus, we had overflow into a couple of other facilities, and they were full. Whoa. So we had about 80 people.
Nice.
We had about 80 people there. When you were at Lumley, it was about the same. It was about 90 people, but it was very similar to the size of the crowd at Lumley. Yes. And they played games. They danced at night. At night there was a big room, and somebody got their cell phone out and dialed up their Amazon Music and played it to the speaker system that was in the room. And so there was and the hotel opened a bar, because some people like that to lubricate themselves before they go dancing. But in any case, so there was that going on every evening. There was dancing, music. It just was a big party, and for the most part, the people that I heard talking about it and that came up and said something to me, it was just fantastic. Everybody loved it, and I was thinking when I went there, I said, what's going to happen if we get there and it's like everybody's sitting there wondering what's going to happen next, and nothing really was planned. Keith didn't have every minute of it planned. It was just going to spontaneously turn into something wonderful, and I wasn't quite so sure how that would work. But Keith was right. It did take place, and it did spontaneously turn into something wonderful, and all the people there said it was the best event ever, and they really did like it. So it turned out very, very well. And I started talking, I think, maybe Wednesday or Thursday. So it was for 3 or 4 days this went on. So that's how long it took. I think I say 3 or 4 because it was like 3 plus half of another day.
Okay. Nice.
So
Well,
it was good.
I got some personal pictures from, and I apologize if I say your name wrong, TD Nordig.
Yeah.
She sent a bunch of pictures. I love them. But she sent a picture of you and Pamela and a dog. And I'm like, oh my goodness, you guys actually took one of your dogs? She said, no, someone brought one, but it looked just like one of yours. And it was just such a great picture. I'm like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Pamela met and petted every dog she saw because she was having, dog withdrawals since her 5 were at home and she was not with them. So we'd be out walking on the sidewalk and she'd see a dog and she'd run over, may I pet your dog? May I hold your dog? And so she was very much trying to get some doggy time in without her dogs. So yeah, there were dogs everywhere we went. Europe's pretty dog friendly. So they let dogs go in restaurants and that sort of thing. And the dogs generally are well behaved, and dogs are welcome mostly in stores. There's a few places where they're not welcome, but most of the time they're welcome.
Nice.
And there's lots of dogs around. People bring their dogs with them when they shop and so on. So it's a little different. So Pamela did get some dog time in while she was there, but yeah, there's lots of pictures. I hadn't been out on a dance floor for probably a decade, just because all the connections I had to that sort of thing disappeared. When I stopped working at a company, then there was no longer the Christmas dance or the other kind of events that get put on and so on. And I had a friend that I worked with for a while that he and his wife liked to dance. So we'd go dancing every once in a while, but that's about a decade ago. Since Pamela and I have both been retired, we're both disconnected from that sort of social scene. And most of the places where they play dance music are also full of smoke and are just generally unpleasant places, to be in. And the music's only half good. Pamela and I still like the, kind of the 70s, rock music, good dance music. And so I hadn't been out on the dance floor for a long time. So that was fun. So I had a good time. And it was very easy for me just talking 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon was very little effort to do that. So I wasn't as exhausted as usual if I spend 6 or 8 hours standing up in front of people and do that for 3 days in a row. That takes a lot out of you. By the end of that, you're exhausted. But by the end of this, I was not exhausted as I usually get. So,
but you're dating yourself about the whole smoky bar thing, because that, well, it hasn't happened here in a really long time. So I'm assuming it hasn't happened in the States.
yeah.
Well, there is still the dry ice, which can be sticky and definitely toxic.
Yeah. So
do that anymore. I don't know.
yeah, maybe they're not so smoky anymore, but it's been a long time. Like I said, at least 10 years since I've been on a dance floor. Yeah, the smoke's probably cleared a lot in 10 years. Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah.
But they're always very crowded.
Yeah.
They're always very crowded. They're shoulder to shoulder people. And of course, during the COVID thing, that was all gone.
Yeah.
They didn't exist because you couldn't get that crowded legally with people.
Yeah,
And,
all of the bars were closed.
Yeah.
Couldn't do any dancing, actually.
Yeah, the dancing, I guess, was over for that time because dancing is one of those things that you just don't do 6 feet apart.
Well,
So
they wouldn't. Well, here dancing was banned. There was no. You were not allowed because you sweat when you dance. So it was part of the. I think anyway. But yeah. All right. Well, that sounds awesome.
So it was fun. It was very good. I think everybody there thought it was superb. They did have a lot of fun with each other, and Keith had some interesting things for them to do. He,
of course,
Keith is a very entertaining guy just all by himself, and if you just sit and listen to Keith, you're entertained. You don't really need to do anything else. But he had everybody doing things that were very entertaining. So, even the people who were generally very to themselves and introverted and so on, even they got up and got involved and got interested. So everybody had a great time.
That's awesome.
It was a lot of fun. And we're going to do something similar again in Huntsville
Nice.
in, I don't know, maybe this fall or maybe this year, or not, at least maybe next year, but sometime soon. Keith has already gotten a venue. You know, there's a playhouse. We have several play companies here, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 different play companies, and there's a what's called the Von Braun Civic Center, and one of those is they have big theaters and middle-sized theaters and small theaters for plays and all sorts of things. So they have what they call a little theater, which just seats like 300 people. Is all that it seats. So it's small, it's kind of intimate, and so he's rented that whole theater.
Cool.
And evidently it wasn't as expensive as he thought. So we'll see how all that works out. You know, it's still just in the advanced planning stages, but there's going to be one here in the States, sort of like what we did in England.
Nice. Maybe I can come to that one.
Yeah, maybe you can come to that one. It won't be so far away. For that matter, to get to Huntsville from where you are is probably a pretty long 2-day drive, or probably a
4 hours?
3 or 4, probably a 4-hour flight.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably a 4-hour flight. Not too bad.
Too bad.
Yeah, it's not like the 9-hour flight you have, going to Europe and back. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we did something different this time that we've never done before. We've always gone cattle class. That's where you're shoulder to shoulder with 5 seats across, kind of a thing. We've always done that because we can't afford to go first class, so we go cattle class. And when you're doing this 9 hours in a row, that gets really, really difficult. And Pamela can't take that anymore. And her legs swell, feet swell. Then by the time you get off, she can't put her shoes back on because her feet have gone up a couple of sizes, and it's just not healthy for her to do that sort of thing, to be in that kind of position where you can't move around for that long a time. And so this time we sprung for the first class.
Nice.
Which was very expensive, but we were going to make some money on the event, so we figured that would be worth it. So it kind of paid for itself. So we went first class, and that makes all the difference in the world. Yeah, all the difference in the world. You can actually lie down. The first class seats for international, not necessarily for within the nation, but international flights. Those long flights, the seats go all the way flat like a bed. And the service in first class is phenomenal, and the food is actually pretty good, and you can lie down and sleep. And so by the time we got there, it's not like you've been up for 30 hours. It's like usually you get there, you've been up and miserable for the last 10 hours, because even though you're like this in an airplane for 9 hours, you were sort of like that, but not quite as packed in the airport for 2 or 3 hours before you even got in the airplane. So anyhow, it made it a lot nicer to go first class. I don't know what it cost. I didn't ask. So best not to find out.
No.
But Pamela said that if she was going to go, it had to be that way or no way, because her body just couldn't make the trip otherwise. And if she doesn't go, I don't go. So that was it. So we had to go first class. So it was a lot nicer. If you have to do international travel, and if you can't afford it, first class is great. Basically, we can't afford it except when we're doing an event that's actually going to pay for it. Then we can afford it. So it was nice. So the whole trip worked out very well.
Nice.
Yeah, no suffering was done at either end.
Perfect.
Yeah, it was really good.
Yeah. All right. Well, I thought we would talk about, and I know we've talked about it a bit. Well, we talk about love all the time, but I thought we'd talk about specifically how love is an action. It's not something, it's you give it. It's an action. It's something that you share. It's the kindness. It's everything, but love is an action. It's not a taking. It's a giving.
It's a giving. Yeah. And it's really an expression of who and what you are. I think that's that's kind of an important thing. It's not something you do. It's something you are. It's not that you decide, oh, I should love this person, or I want to love this person, or this person needs love. It's just, you are sharing yourself because that is the way you are. It's not an action that's premeditated. It's an action that just happens. So it's a sharing of self. And
so pretty. It's just a beautiful way of putting it, because I
yeah,
know that, yeah, it's a beautiful.
yeah, it's just a sharing of self. So in order to get to the point where you have self to share, you know, first of all, of course, you have to, be at ease with yourself. You have to like yourself. You have to be okay with you. If you have negative attitudes towards self, then, just that idea of just, sharing your caring and your affection for just people, for everyone, is difficult. And you have a capacity for that. Everybody has some capacity for just sharing themselves, just giving, just because that's what they feel like doing. And that capacity is inversely proportional to your fear. Inversely proportional. No, I shouldn't use that kind of language, should I? It's the opposite of your fear. So the more fear you have, then the less capacity you have for love. So if you're just a very, very fearful person, you still have a capacity for love, to just give yourself because you want to, because you care. But it's a smaller fraction of yourself. If you don't have much fear, then you have a much greater capacity to love, and you tend to spread that love around lots of places and lots of people. It's just a general way that you interact with others. And that others is dogs and horses and cats as well as other people. We're not talking just about people. We're talking, and with the trees, and nature. And it's just how you connect with everything outside of yourself, including the environment. So yeah, it's a sharing. So yeah, it's not a thing that you do or something that's outside of you or whatever. It's just who you are and what you are. And the whole idea is get rid of that fear, grow your capacity to love. And if you do that, then that love will just connect all sorts of things that you'll care to, and all sorts of people and all sorts of situations. Love is not just romantic love. That's just one sliver of it. Love is caring about caring in a deep way about other people. And that's really all it is. It's not a very complicated thing. And it has to be organic to you. It can't be that you act as if you care, because that's acting. That's not being. It's nice, civilizing, as I say. Everybody appreciates you acting as if you cared, but that's not what helps you grow up, and it's not real. And eventually that runs out and turns into negativity. If you act your way through life, pretty soon you start feeling used. You start feeling, you deserve better because you've done all these nice things for people and they're not doing it for you. You see, the idea that you were doing it for a result, you were doing it to get something back, starts to eat at you, and then it turns negative after a while. So you can only act your way through life for so long. And unfortunately, when people do this falling in love thing, which is mostly falling in need, they tend to act a lot. They act the way they think the other person would like them to be. And that is all very nice, but then once that becomes, they're married, or once they're, living together, and 4 or 5 years have gone by, the acting kind of runs thin, and you end up just with people who they are. And sometimes it's not nearly as pretty as it was, in the first few days or weeks or months or even years, when all that acting was going on. But you can't help that. Eventually, you have to be who you are. If you're not, you become resentful. You resent that you have to act, that you have to do these things, and you start measuring whether or not you're getting what you wanted to get for the acting that you're doing, because now your acting is you going out of your way. And is that other person going out of their way for you? You see, whereas if it's really love, that's not, you don't feel like you're going out of your way. You're just expressing how you feel about people. And however they express it or don't express it back is irrelevant. It doesn't make any difference. So that's kind of the key thing about love. Love has to be who you are and what you are, and something that you share. It's how you interact with other people. So it's the natural way that a low entropy being is. That's the way I kind of define love. Love is kind of a natural expression of a low entropy being. That's love. And that low entropy, of course, that's another sciencey thing I probably shouldn't have said, but that low entropy means high quality of consciousness, means not much fear. You get rid of your fear. And when you get rid of your fear, then it's easy to like people, even people who aren't all that nice, even people who are greedy or self-centered. You still can like them. I mean, it's not that you like them being self-centered. You just realize that that's the way they are. They're struggling with their own fears, with their own, unhappiness and difficulties, their lessons, and they're struggling to learn. And they're doing the best they can with who they are. And then you can look at them and just like them for for who they are. And the fact that they are maybe prickly sometimes, well, you just work around that. You don't press their buttons. You be careful what you say, and you try to be positive. And if they go off and get negative, well, you just let it go, because you don't take anything personally, because it's not really about you, because what you are is loving. And so love is such a simple idea, when you really understand it, the what is love, and a lot of people say, well, that's hard to explain, and that's so complicated, but it isn't really all that complicated. You get rid of your fear, and then you just act natural, and that's being loving. You care about people because you don't see people as, what can they do for me? What can I get out of this person? What's the advantage in getting to know them? You just don't see it that way. You see everybody as somebody of value, somebody who's trying, somebody who has potential, somebody who's trying to grow up. And you have compassion. Rather than judging people, you have compassion for people. So it's that's the general concept of what it is from the viewpoint of love. That's generally the way life is. So from the loving viewpoint, you don't look out at the world and say, oh, what an awful bunch of slimy, greedy, awful people out there, all the hate and all the, we just see all the negative stuff that's going on, and, people are shooting each other, and particularly in the U.S., we seem to have a problem with that mindset. There's all of this horrendous negativity and kind of meanness toward each other going on. But instead of letting that make you angry, that just makes you feel compassionate for all the people, the victims and the perpetrators. They're all struggling. They're all confused. They don't know up from down, and a very famous quote that you'll recognize immediately comes to mind, and that is, when you look at these people, you say, forgive them, they know not what they do. That's really the crux of it. They don't really see themselves as awful people. They don't see themselves as they see themselves as justified. They see themselves as, yeah, they are, they're serving out justice. They're whatever, that's their viewpoint, that they're justified, they're right, they understand, other people don't, and they're full of what's it called? Well, they're full of fear, but that's not what I'm saying. They're full of self-righteousness. Yeah, they're just full of self-righteousness. And in their own mind, they're doing good. They are teaching people an important lesson, or whatever. Or maybe they're even just getting even, if they feel that they've been wronged. But they feel justified in any case.
Yes.
Of course, nothing violent like that is justified at all. It never's justified. But in their mind, they're so twisted up. They're so mentally ill. And I use that mental illness in a very generic way. Most of the people walking around in our culture today are mentally ill. Mental illness is not like a thing that very few people have. It's endemic. Most people have a certain degree of mental illness that they live with. And by mental illness, what I'm really saying is high entropy, low quality of consciousness. And you might say that mental ills may be also spiritually ill too. They are just living only to a tiny fraction of their potential. And they're so wadded up with fear that they just get everything wadded up in their minds. They get angry. They get upset. They're very judgmental. They're quick to point their finger at other people. They are very self-centered. They act like children, really. And I guess if you're 6 years old and you act like a child, that's okay. But when you're 66 years old and you act like a child, that's mental illness. You just failed to grow up, failed to mature. So that's what I mean. So now that I'm talking mental illness in a very generic term, which means ill, dysfunctional, conscious, from the viewpoint, from the attitudes, from the feelings, from the anger, all that's dysfunctional.
Yeah.
And things that are dysfunctional, I'm calling them ill. If your body's dysfunctional, we call that an illness. So in this case, the illness isn't physical, but it's emotional and spiritual. And we just take that emotional and spiritual and wad it all up into mental, so. But that's the world we live in. And if that makes you angry, then that's because you're self-centered. The only reason for getting angry is you say, well, that's not the way it should be. That's not the way I want it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, the way you want it isn't really something real. What you want is not necessarily the way it is. And you need to just let it be the way it is and not demand that it be right the way you want it to be. No matter which side of any of those arguments you're on, everybody feels the same way, that, they get angry because it's not the way they want it to be. They get angry at other people because those people aren't the way they want them to be. They get angry with their spouses. They get angry with their children because they're not the way they want them to be. Well, the problem isn't all those people, the spouses or the children. The problem is you demanding that people be the way you want them to be. And yes, I know the way you want them to be is what's best for them and best for everybody. But, everybody on every side feels that same way. You need to let them learn and grow on their own in their own time. You can't force it. You can't push it. You can't make people grow. You can give them a safe space to grow into, which means you don't fuss with them. You don't feed their fear. You don't feed their anger. Give them as much of a safe space as you can, and they'll either grow or they won't. If they do, that's wonderful. If they don't, well, they get to try again and again and again until eventually they get it. That's evolution. So that's the way the world is. And the world is actually a pretty neat place. And we have been evolving and growing, and with all the nastiness out there in the world, believe me, it's a lot less nasty than it used to be. If you can imagine it, it was a lot more rough and violent
Yeah.
and demeaning than it is now. Yes, it's still that way a lot. We're still into control, power, force a lot in our culture, but not like it used to be. We are growing and we are getting there and we're, excuse me, and we are evolving. So that's neat. That's good. And we have to do it in our own time. Can't hurry that up. So find ways to just find your spot in it and do what you can to help and enjoy life.
Yeah. A lot of people tend to, well, like they're justifying their actions, they think they're helping, fixing, changing.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not love. That's them trying to manipulate the love that they think they deserve, or that's what, it's like they see in their minds what a relationship with anybody is. They have this vision, or the media has created, which is worse, this vision of what the perfect friendship is, what the perfect relationship is, what the perfect family is. And we judge everything from that vision that we either have or have seen or believe is somehow real. And what we don't realize is that, well, we don't know what's going on in those pictures. We see a picture of a happy family and we think, oh, how wonderful and how beautiful and how perfect, but we don't know what's going on in that picture. We only see a picture, a moment, a second of, and who knows what had to happen to get to that picture, or what happened as soon as the picture was done. All we know is that it was this, we have this idyllic vision of what we think everything should look like. But it's not an action. It's like it's this stuck in our mind. This is how it has to be. And so we try and manipulate everything around us to create that.
Exactly. It's what people do. And what that stems from is one, self-centered. I want the world and everybody in it to be the way they should be.
Yeah.
And the way they should be is, how I have judged that they should be. So, that is the perspective. If you place yourself at the center of the universe, you see that you understand things. Other people don't seem to understand them.
No.
You know how things should work and what they should say and do, and other people just don't seem to be able to get it right. And, it's funny when you think that, of course, that's the way it is. I understand how people should be and what's wrong with them and how they need to fix themselves, and everybody feels that way. Even those people you're looking at and thinking they're so awful and they're so wrong and they just don't understand, they're looking at you and looking at you and saying, oh, that person just doesn't understand. It's, you have this idea that you understand and know almost everything, and you know how people should be. And that, yes, gets us into trying to manipulate people to be that way. Not because we're self-centered, but because we're trying to help. It's all for them. We're just trying to help them be better. And we know what's better, so we're just trying to help the world be a better place by fixing it and making it better, explaining to people how they need to change, pressuring them where we have the ability to pressure, manipulating where we can, and complaining where we can't do anything about it. So, that is typically the way people go through life. And the cause is just self-centeredness. And the self-centeredness is caused by fear and ego and beliefs. You have these beliefs that you know what's best for other people, but you don't know what's best for other people. Other people have to grow in their own way, in ways that mean something to them, not in ways that mean something to you. And there isn't anything really you can do about that other than let people be who they are. Because as much as you try to push on them to be a way, they put energy into pushing back and not being that way. And you become part of the problem. Part of the reason they are the way they are is because of the way you are. And you're the way you are because of the way they are. And the whole thing is just this big bunch of people, each one who judges the others and finds them wanting and would like to fix them. Because they have very little ego in their own mind, and they're just trying to help save the world by fixing all these people. So they feel really positive about, yeah, okay, I'm positive. Yes, and no, I don't have any ego. But life is difficult for them. It's always difficult. And they think, well, if I could just get over this hump, that's the problem I have now. If I could just get my spouse to do this or to do that or whatever, then life would be almost perfect. And either they never get over that hump because that other person just can't be shoved over that hump. They push back, they go the other way, or they do get over that hump, and then they find there's another hump right after that one that's just as intransigent. And if they get over that one, then they find there's another one right after that. And there's no end to the bumps in the road of life. There's one bump after another that you have to get over. One hill after another that you have to, push this heavy, rock to the top of. And there's always the next hill. And the idea that one day there'll be the last one and then life will be great after that doesn't happen that way, because all those problems you see aren't really the problem. They're just symptoms of the problem. The real problem is you, judging people, wanting to manipulate, seeing yourself as knowing what's right for everybody, what's best. Your anger. You get angry because people aren't doing things the right way. People are stupid. People are violent. People are all sorts of wrong. And it just makes you angry that there's people even allowed to be there. So that's why there's always going to be another hill, because the source of those hills, the source of those bumps in that life's road is you. You have to grow up. And the amazing thing is that once you get rid of that fear and you just let people be and you just love and like people the way they are, you just accept them the way they are, then that bumpy road just smooths right out. And there aren't any more big bumps in the road, and life is good and you are happy because you don't have a lot of things that have to be a certain way. You let them be however they are. Deal with them the best you can as they are, and you see life as a fun challenge. How can I deal with this in a positive way? And it becomes fun. And yes, there's a lot of nasty things going on. People are still being shot in the classroom, and ugly things are going on everywhere. But that's the way people are. They have to outgrow that. And believe it or not, it's been worse, and we're better off now, even all of that. It's still a lot better, and it's going to get better yet. As time goes on, we're going to become kinder, gentler, more grown up. We're going to evolve as a species because evolution just keeps chugging along. It's not quick, but it's relentless. So we're getting there. And the more you evolve, the easier it is to evolve more. So it actually accelerates. And we see that acceleration. A lot of changes have taken place. I mean, if you just look at the last 50 years, how much has changed? Life is totally different than it was 50 years ago. I'm 78 now, and, if I think about the way life was and the way people saw reality and so on, back when I was, a young person, maybe a teenager, whatever, the world is so totally different now than it was then. It's not even a similar space that we're in. I mean, it's changing so much. And the next 20 years is going to change even more than that, more than it did in the last 50, because it's accelerating. The change is accelerating.
Yeah.
And as that acceleration goes and we learn and we grow, hopefully it won't just be technology that's improving, but the quality of consciousness needs to improve with it. Otherwise, we'll use that technology in very negative ways. So that's kind of our challenge now, that if we can grow to keep up with our technology.
Right.
So love is a very simple concept. It's just the natural way that people interact with each other once they get rid of their fear. It's that's all it is. And there's all kinds of love, even though we just have that one word, and the Greeks had 4, 5, or 6 words for it. Still, there's lots of love comes in different sizes. You don't have to like somebody to love them. All of us have probably family members or people who are close to us, brothers and sisters or parents or friends or whatever, that we don't really like very much, but we still love them. We still care about them. They're important to us, and we hope the best for them. We have very positive feelings toward them, but we don't really like being around them very much. But that isn't a cause. It's a cause of sadness. Sometimes you feel kind of sad that here are these people I love, and I see them just hurting each other, or I see them just constantly, doing things that creates pain for themselves. But that's the way it is. You accept that. It doesn't make me unhappy. It's sad, but it's not sad like, oh, boo-hoo sad. It's just sad because they are, but it's just the way it has to be. It's like you can't get to the next stage without going through this stage. You've got to learn the lessons you have to learn here before you get to the next step. So they're just trying to learn the lessons that they need to learn to get to the next step, and they're having trouble doing it. Well, it takes a long time. It's not an easy thing to do. So you have to have patience and let them take all the time they need to get it done, however long that might be. Might be many lifetimes before they can get over that particular hump. But that's all right. They'll eventually get there. So that kind of leaves, the whole concept is very positive. There's nothing negative about it, and it doesn't ever leave you feeling down. Love is always an up kind of feeling, a happy kind of feeling, even when people are still unpleasant. It doesn't make you feel unpleasant. If anything, it makes you feel like you care. You have compassion for their pain. So it's so simple. There's not really much more to say about it. It's a really simple idea.
Right. Right.
A lot easier to do, a lot easier to talk about than it is to be. I agree. Because there's a lot of fear we have to get rid of. Fear that makes us, self-centered, ego, and beliefs. We believe we're right and other people who are different than us are wrong, and that we're better than other people, and so on. All of that's just your fear and your ego and your beliefs all wadded up together to trying to make you feel positive and successful about yourself, when in fact you don't really feel that way. And that is the root of most of people's problems, is that they don't really feel that way. They feel insecure. They feel failed in some way, but it's a way that they have hidden deep down inside. And that fear informs most of their choices. Most of the things they say and do, most of the choices they make are because of that fear. So when your fear is making most of your choices, your life is full of problems, full of difficulties. And it just seems like you can't ever turn it around. It's like everywhere you go, everything you do, every relationship you have seems to fall apart and eventually become toxic. Well, it's not because the world out there is toxic that happens. It's because you are the one that's creating that problem. But most people won't see that. They won't see it as themselves. They'll blame it on somebody else. which makes it hard for them to grow up because they don't accept responsibility for their own pain and their own unhappiness. They always have somebody else they can blame it on. So when they're blame free, well, they don't have to change. They're fine just the way they are. It's that other person that needs to change. So that's why we don't change very much, because we convince ourselves, we believe that we don't need to change. We're fine. Other people are the problem. So we don't change. We don't put much effort into it. It's only when we wake up to the fact that, oh, almost all of that pain and dysfunction in my life is self-created. And when you see that, then you start wanting, then you start wanting to change and get serious about it. Then's when you start making big changes in your life. Start doing things that you've not done, something to get you out of your rut. But until you see that, then you're just convinced that you're fine the way you are. Other people are all screwed up, and that life is just a difficult, nasty place. And you'd like to avoid it, I don't want to come back here anymore. This is such a rotten place with so many rotten people in it. And that's a belief. And that belief hides you from the truth. Keeps the truth hidden from you. And that's the trap that most people are trapped in, which is why evolution is so slow. We only grow up very, very slowly because we have to fight our way through this self-centered attitude of we're fine. It's all everything that doesn't work right, somebody else's fault. So if your life is like that, then you should you should sit down and take a look at of really what's going on, and take responsibility for the fact if something makes you angry, take responsibility for getting angry. That's your choice to be angry.
Right.
Take responsibility for your life. If your relationships aren't working out, don't blame it on somebody else. Take responsibility for them not working out. If you were all peace and light, probably your relationship would get better. The only reason you can't be peace and light is that other person's just awful, doesn't deserve it. You see, yes. That's the trap we get in. So love is a simple thing. You care about people because you do. And it's not just romantic love sort of thing. It's just love, caring is love. And it's a simple thing, and you've got an endless capacity. You can love, not only tens of people, but tens of thousands of people. You can care about lots of people. Love isn't something that you dish out, one spoonful at a time. Love is something you just give away because you give it away because that's the way you are. It's just what you feel. And you don't expect a return for it. You're just expressing yourself. So it's a simple thing. But fear is not such a simple thing. Fear is a thing that's, got its tentacles deep into your psyche, and it's not so easy just to grab it and pull it up by its roots. It takes a lot of effort to change, to get rid of that fear, take responsibility. Growing up, getting rid of the judgmental attitude, blaming others, that's a hard thing to do. But just be aware, catch yourself whenever you're negative, whenever you're thinking a negative thought, whenever you're complaining about something. Complaining is negative. If you're complaining about something or someone or something, and you're upset or you're just whatever, realize that is a problem. You are part of the problem when you feel that way. You need to change that. That doesn't mean that you see some horrible thing makes you happy. No, horrible things won't make you happy. It's not that. That's kind of crazy. But it's just that those horrible things, you realize that's us. That's the way we are. That's the level of quality of consciousness that's in humanity right now. And until we outgrow it, it's going to stay that way. And you can manipulate things around it. You can pass laws. You can do all sorts of things that will help the symptoms. It may help fix symptoms, but it won't fix the problem. And those problems are going to bubble up in a different venue, some other way. Okay, I'm all in favor of making guns a lot harder to get a hold of. But if you got rid of all the guns, so that nobody in the world had a gun, nobody, no army, nothing, all the guns in the world suddenly evaporated and disappeared and weren't able to make any more, people would still find ways to be nasty to each other, right? Well, you go back 500 years, they didn't have guns. They stuck pointy pieces of metal into each other. It worked, about the same way, except it was up close and personal. It wasn't so much at a distance. But that low quality of consciousness is going to work out and come out and be expressed because it's there. So modifying symptoms, getting rid of symptoms is nice because, nasty symptoms are nasty and we have to put up with it. But realize you're only getting rid of symptoms. You're not affecting the problem. Get rid of that dictator who's mean. All right. That's not solving a problem. That's solving a symptom of a problem. That dictator is a symptom of a low quality of consciousness problem in the world in general. So we have to think of it that way, that yes, we can change laws, we can change our cultures, we can change all kinds of things to make the symptoms less annoying. But more annoying other things will occur.
Right.
And it'll bubble up in other ways. It will reassert itself in just as ugly as it was before, but with just a different face, because it's there. Until you change the quality of consciousness in the population, we're going to have all this control, power, force, ugliness going on all the time. We're going to have this craziness. It's just because that's the way we are. And you can't fix all those people. They have to fix themselves. You can give them a positive environment that helps them fix themselves. When I say helps them, what it does is it makes it easier. It raises the probability that they'll fix themselves. They still might not fix themselves. But there's nothing you can do about that. It just takes time. It may be decades. It may be another couple of centuries. How long will it take? I don't know, but that's evolution. It chugs along at its own speed, and it's difficult for people to change themselves. So it's slow. But people can change themselves once they understand what the problem is. People can do that real quickly. They don't have to take another millennia. So the point is that just understanding it intellectually will give you some direction of what you have to do. But then eventually you have to change it, not intellectually, but intuitively at the being level. That's where the change has to come from, or it's not going to help.
Compassion.
Yeah, compassion, love, caring about other people.
Acceptance, yeah. I mean, it's like things happen and we have to find a way to accept them for who they are or what they are or how it happened. Or I mean, I think there's a lot of people that kind of go through that spiritual bypass thing where they oh, everything's wonderful. I don't have any fear. I have no ego. Everything's great. I have no emotion except a smile on my face. But I think if you can come at it that, no matter what, everybody was 2 years old and everybody started from the same place, and maybe not the same physical situation or the same, there's all sorts of things, but we can't know what they've gone through. So having compassion and being okay and accepting them for who they are is kind of, that really is the only thing you can do. Why do we trying to change people? Right? Yeah. Like, why do we keep saying, I don't know?
Yeah. Probably you'd think that we would learn because we try to change people and it never works. Right? We can't change people, but somehow we have this belief that if we just explain it to them or just push them a little more this way or that way or make our manipulation a little more clever, we will change them. That's not the case. At best, what you'll change is behavior. But behavior doesn't change the person. And it's even hard changing behavior. But okay, we can change behavior. You know, we can do that with dogs and cats and horses and people. You can change behavior, but it doesn't really help that person grow up. They act in a way that you like better, but eventually all that acting, like I say, turns sour, and now you're going to pay the price for that. All right, you got them to smile and act nice for 10 years, and now you've got 10 years worth of resentment dug deep in that person, and now you're going to have to pay the price for it because eventually it comes out. You're pushing them to be a way that they are not. And because they're trying to be, happy people, they go along, but it's not real if it comes out of the intellect and comes out of the behavior. It has to come out of your heart. It has to come out of your soul. It has to be an expression of who you are. And then it's natural. And then you're grown up. So making the world a better place by getting rid of symptoms is nice, but it doesn't fix that. It's something else is going to express that ugliness in some other way. So it's helpful in the short term, but doesn't do much good in the long term. And you can only
you or the other person.
Exactly. You can grow yourself. That's what's important. Change yourself. Change yourself. Get rid of your fear. Get rid of your negativity. Get rid of your complaining. Get rid of your pointing fingers and saying negative things about other people. Get rid of all of that. And if you can get rid of it, again, not just act better, because you can just act through that and not do those things. And again, all the people around you will like it, but it won't make you any better a person. You need to be that way. Really change it. The way you see things, the way you interpret the data. That's the key.
Yeah.
That's the key thing that's necessary. So love is such a simple, natural thing. You get rid of your fear and the love is just there. That's what you are. That's what's left. Fear is the thing that turns everything bad, makes things not work. That's where the control, power, force comes from. You have people that need to control. They need power. They need to force things to be their way. They need to change others. All that control, power, force comes from fear. The fear that things aren't the way you want them to be. Self-centeredness. So simple ideas, but most people struggle with it a whole lot. And I'm one. I struggled. I'm 78. I've had a lot of years of struggling. Made some success. But still, it's not a simple path. It's not that easy just to say, oh, I see, I get it now. Okay, I'm going to change myself. Well, that doesn't work. It sounds good, but it doesn't usually work that way. Changing yourself is something that you have to really get down deep inside and make the way you are different. And that's it's a hard thing to do, but it's not impossible. If you really want to, you'll do it. You'll make that choice.
All right. Well, this has been a great show. I liked it. I'm getting curious as to when Keith is going to organize your next event, but sure we will hear.
I think maybe sometime late this fall or something like that. I don't know, but yeah, it'll be in Huntsville, which unfortunately is not a major airport. It's not a big city. It's not New York or Dallas Fort Worth or any of those places where they have big hubs that you can get to, and from one big hub to the next big hub in a single flight. You're always going to have to take at least 2 flights, to get to Huntsville. One from wherever you are if you get to a big airport, and sometimes 3 flights if you also don't live, in a major city. If you're outside a major city, then you have to take 1 flight that gets you to the major city, then another one that gets you to the next major city, and then another one that actually gets you to where you're going. And that can be very tedious if there's 2 or 3 hours in the airport between all of those. That's the downside. But Actually, Huntsville does have an international airport,
Oh,
but
well,
it doesn't have a lot of international flights. It has some because it's got so much government work here, and the government people are constantly going to, overseas international flights. So I guess that's why it has that.
and I just want to make a note that the background that Tom is in is actually his backyard. Backyard? Backyard.
That's my backyard. Yeah, if you sit on my back deck, that's what you see. Yes.
Nice.
So it's fake. It's digital. I'm not actually sitting in front of a bunch of green trees and blue sky, but it's real. If that I was sitting on my back deck, that's what it would look like. That's a picture taken from my house. So I do live in the woods on a hill.
All right. Well, you've been listening to News of the Heart. We've been getting to the heart of what matters with Tom Campbell. And, well, between his celebration and love, the simplicity of trying to grow up and lower our entropy. Love it. All right. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Laurie.